now by Pastor Bud Fancy, and he is the lead pastor at Framework Church. So, Pastor Bud, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I've been in ministry 49 years. Hard to believe. I originally grew up in Toronto, Nova Scotia, Canada. Felt a call to ministry when I was I kind of felt a call when I was 16, but resisted that for quite some time. But at 19, after taking a year in Christian development at a Bible college in Sussex, New Brunswick, I said yes to that call. And since that time, since I finished my degree over the next 3 years, since 1973, been in full-time ministry. And it's been quite a journey.
Yes, I'm sure it has. So you're married and you have some kiddos and some grandkiddos.
Yeah. Sure. Actually, my ministry began in Nova Scotia. I was single for 2 years. A little difficult to do ministry the way they want to sometimes when you're single, but that was a great experience. And I met my first wife, Kathy, who I lost to cancer when she was 41. And since that time, married my wife, Irene. Kathy and I adopted 2 boys, one Seth. He's now senior pastor in a church in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Looking forward to seeing he and my grandkids after 20 months of separation here real soon. Then I have a son, Zachary, who we also adopted here in the state of Maine. He's now a state trooper in southern Maine. If he gets stopped by an officer with the name Fancy, ask him for a break. Tell him I said so. And then I have a daughter. Yes. And I have a daughter, 19, who's now in Southern Wesleyan University, one of our universities associated with the denomination we're part of, the Wesleyan Church. And she's a sophomore. And she just left home. We're kind of feeling the empty nest experience.
Okay, so you've mentioned a little bit about your history in the ministry. Tell us a little bit about some of the places that you've ministered in.
Well, it's been a variety. I couldn't figure out for a while why it particularly happened, but I found myself in several places. Rather than staying 25 years in a place, I read a book on leadership, and they talked about a leadership style called re-engineering, which really referred to rebuilding churches. And I found myself moving from church to church after 5-6 years, taking churches that were struggling and rebuilding them, and did that for the first 25 years of my ministry, and started out in southern Nova Scotia, very eastern point of that province, eastern point of mainland Canada, actually. Then came to Easton, Maine. Loved my 5 years there, moved to Holton and spent 5 years there. 5 seemed to be the magic number. After that, I actually made a shift and went to Birmingham, Alabama. So here I am, a Canadian from Nova Scotia with an accent. Spent 10 years in Maine talking with and all of those expressions. And I moved to the South and I got a little South in my mouth. So I was pretty mongrel when I moved back to Scarborough, Maine, and planted a church there. Since that time, I've pastored in New York, and despite the fact I'm a Red Sox fan and they're all Yankees, and surprisingly, 12 years ago, started my 13th year, God called me back to the county. So I've been everywhere.
Yes, well, we're glad to have you back in the county. Tell me a little bit about your current role at Framework. You are the lead pastor. Tell us a little bit about what you do in that role.
Yes, I'm lead pastor. I have a really good staff. There's 6 of us, including myself, that are full-time, and then have a part-time counselor, Barb Helpison, and then a seniors pastor who's in 2 days a week, but does a lot more than that, Reverend Berna Brown, who's been in ministry 60 years, I think, is what it's 61. But my role is basically, I do about a third of the preaching. We have Rick Kavanaugh, who's was senior pastor here for years, who's on our staff, and other great capable preachers in our staff. So we share that load, and I chair our local board of administration and do quite a bit of counseling, a lot of outreach, trying to share the gospel with people. I enjoy that part of it a lot. And I guess you would say that my main role is just kind of make sure everything's operating somewhat in the direction we want it to go.
Any special memory that stands out for you over the last few years that just really reminds you of why you got into ministry? I mean, obviously a call from God. But any memory that really kind of shows you why you love it?
Most of those memories, there's a bunch of them. Most of them relate to people that I've seen changed. And there's a gentleman that comes to our church who I think he was a great guy, a hard worker, and loved his family, but he really struggled. By his own admission, he'd let me use his name, but it won't. He's with just a lot of bitterness, a lot of anger. So he came into my office. I asked him, why he was there. He had asked to speak to me, and he was involved in a little men's group that I lead on Thursdays, 6 o'clock in the morning. He looked at me and he said, I'm an old man. I need to know Jesus better. He accepted the Lord in a very personal way into his life at that time. Totally changed him. He went from a guy who struggled with bitterness and was very angry. And ironically, other people have commented to me since that time about that, because he became one of the most forgiving, caring guys. Just was in a Bible study with him this morning, and we were talking about how it had changed him. New people have walked into my church and asked me later on, said, we looked and saw him there and wondered, what he doing there? And he went over to them and said, there's some things I said to you over the years that I apologize for. Those things make ministry exciting, to see God work in lives and transform them and literally set them free. One of the reasons why I'm still in ministry, well past retirement time, or what I thought would be retirement time, is the fact that there's nothing more real than God in our lives. And I continue to see God do things that only can relate to being really supernatural. God is amazing. He knows how to take our lives and make miracles out of them. And I'm pretty addicted to seeing God do miracles and change others. That's what makes it exciting for me.
All right. Well, thank you for letting us get to know you, Pastor Bud.
Thank you. It's a privilege.